Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Everything HR podcast. I'm your host, Manuel, founder and CEO of Omni HR. Today, Becca and I are going to be discussing recruiting. So, we're going to be bringing up the recruiting side of things from the HR, the hiring team's perspective, as well as the candidate's perspective. How are you doing today, Beck?
Not bad. How are you?
Another great day.
I appreciate you bringing me on again. I'm supposing that I'll be giving you that candidate perspective, considering I have no idea what they do in HR.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, that's one of the things that I think that we can do the best is we have that various perceptions of the dynamic. You can go over a lot on the recruitment side, but these are all a lot of the things that just as a candidate or a team member, anyone, even if you're not in HR, could use some of these tools at any time. And then if you are in HR or even just like a manager or a leader in a small organization, typically you're wearing a lot of hats. You know what I mean? Like you need to be well versed in a lot of different areas, and recruiting is huge. All right. So first off, I want to talk to you about when was the last time that you were searching for a job?
Oh, I want to say, was it September, October of 2023? Remember, I had been on a very short medical leave
Mm-hmm.
from a previous job, and I got let go while on medical leave. That can be a whole nother topic, or even to discuss today if you want. But yeah, just recently. What was that? 6 months ago.
I don't
Uh,
remember. So I asked you.
So about 7 months ago.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. Well, when you were doing it, I know that, as a candidate, you have to sift through a lot of different job requirements. Is there anything in particular about those job posts that caught your attention, things that you kind of gravitated more towards?
Um, like we mentioned in our last podcast, the whole requiring a certain amount of experience, that entry level requiring 7 years of experience is insane to me. Um, so just the experience where the job is requiring excuse me, to be on property full time, but the job itself doesn't necessarily need you to be on premises the full time.
Hmm.
So it could be a job that's, customer service representative for a company that I was looking at to apply to, but that's something that I could easily work at home to do,
Hmm.
taking calls and still be able to have it soundproof like they wanted to. You don't need to be back in the office. So location, the experience requirements, some of the education requirements were a little out of whack, such as I was looking at some of the basic IT roles, such as just assisting someone with turning off and turning their computer back on. And I mean like the basic desktop support technician. And some of them are requiring a master's level degree, certifications and programs that have no relevancy to that role itself. Maybe they want you to grow into something else, but for an entry level requiring so much schooling behind it, anyone, and I quite literally mean this, anyone coming out with a high school diploma can easily become a desktop support technician. Most of the time, it is restarting something, unplugging something, making sure cords are actually plugged into the correct items. It does not require um, a higher base or even like a mid-level IT skill base. So seeing some of that for the entry level is a bit ridiculous. It
Hmm.
is. It's asking too much and then giving too little in return. Um, so that's location, education background, experience. Am I missing a category I could probably touch on?
Well, yeah, so those are a lot of the very key components that all job requirements should have. They should have the location. One big thing, I guess the first thing that you'd be looking for is the name, right? So the job title itself.
Yeah.
A lot of times when it comes to the job title, that'll kind of give you the first hint, like, is this even something I'm interested in? Is this something that I am, is it a level that I want to be at? If you are just getting out of high school, an entry level help desk, assistant or helper is exactly what you're looking for. You're not looking for VP of IT,
Right.
so absolutely. So the title, the purpose and duties, the responsibilities, qualifications, and then the conditions.
I also, and I know there's controversy behind this. You and I have talked about this off the podcast, but I want to see that pay range before I apply and waste my time. We all know that applications now are ridiculously long with the questionnaires, the surveys. That's before you even get to the part where you're filling out your information, which the interface for that is really dumb. You have something that tells you to upload your resume to then later fill it out manually.
No,
Like,
I,
what are
I
we doing here?
100%, I 100% agree with that.
So in my opinion, I want to see that pay range. And I've gotten to a point in my life that I'm not going to waste my time interviewing for a job that is not going to actually benefit me and my family.
Mm,
So when I go to interview, and I've had multiple people tell me this at the interview, um, they feel like I'm interviewing them, like I am the employer and they're the employee, because I'm going to be asking questions like, why should I work here?
yeah,
You want to know why I applied and why you should hire me. Um, I need to know why you need someone. What happened to the last person? What are you paying? Is it actually beneficial to be here? Do you have benefits? What's the work life balance? I'm asking you all these questions because I'm genuinely not going to waste my time working for someone who does not actually care about their employees and the turnout.
yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, you do have a very unique way of interviewing. And that's something that I would like to touch on a lot in this podcast because it's a very effective tool. You know, you've gotten feedback from your interviewers, which is great. So as far as the job post itself, you know, we kind of hit some of the very key points and some of the areas that in HR you really want to focus on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you have the job title, making sure that it is what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what the level of role is, is it going to be leading a team or part of a team? You know, all that can actually be put into the title.
Yeah.
Um, and then from there, the purpose. I like having after the title, just having a little like kind of bio of what the role is actually going to be.
Yes.
Just because it kind of gives you an idea of like where exactly this role fits in the grander scheme of the organization.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the duties and responsibilities. So going over like, you know, the actual day to day work, you know, basically process that you're going to be going through. And a lot of HR departments lately have been doing like, and more as needed or
Oh,
more per needed. Can you
let
give
me
me?
tell you something about that because I know you're about to ask me. Listen, listen, okay? I don't appreciate that. And the reason why I say this is not it's not because I'm a millennial. It's not because I'm in my 20s. It has nothing to do with my age or generation. I cannot stand when I get hired for a job and I'm doing 8 other jobs at the same time. I've done it in almost every role. I say almost because some have the exception where they stick to the role and the role itself. And I've gone out of my own way to volunteer and help others, but my boss in certain roles has never asked me, well, as a team player, you know, that whole let me feel like I need to guilt you for you to stay extra hours, but I'm not going to pay you for it. Just jokes on you. No, I don't like that. And the reason why is because when they put will fill roles as needed or whatever the terms may be, then they can use that against you while you're working there. Well, you signed this employee contract and you agreed that you will fill the roles as needed. So then people get the bait and switch. And some might say, well, that's not a bait and switch. If you had read it, then you should have had known. There are assumptions that if I'm getting hired in an IT role, I should not have to be doing marketing
Mhm.
or I should not have to be fulfilling roles of sales. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Um so yeah, you also mentioned something else but I already forgot. And if it comes up, we'll mention it, but it was important.
Gotcha. Well, the topics in a good job, a job requirement or job board, it has the job title, the job purpose, the duties and responsibilities. You got it? Go ahead.
If I may, yes. So while you're discussing that, the bio. Do you remember when we were working at the casino and I got hired on after you? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
I got upset because in the job description that they give you before you actually get the job doesn't tell you the benefits of the job.
Mm.
And I got upset because holidays weren't paid. And as my role, you remember you were HR, so you got certain holidays off. Whereas
Mm.
my role, I had to be there in IT. So long as the casino was open, IT was open.
Yeah.
And as you can recall, I wasn't home for Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, any of the major federal holidays. And they weren't paid holidays either. It was just basic pay.
Mm.
A lot of people in the executive side don't feel that they need to pay their employees to be there on holidays outside of their normal pay range. But they're also the same people who aren't even there at the job site. So
Mm.
that's an argument in of itself. I know. But that's something that I feel should be included in the job description before you get to even apply.
Mm.
We should be seeing that on the descriptions, under the benefits sections. Do we actually, the 401k was a total mess. You know what I mean? Like there was so much that wasn't disclosed until you actually got the job, until you actually had the contract. Just getting into that role itself,
Mm.
we had to pass how many background checks? We had to list all of our addresses, all of our employers, and I'm not talking about the last couple of years.
Yeah.
It was from like day one.
5 to 10 years. Yeah.
Yeah, and 10 years ago, I don't remember where I was. I can give you a rough scenario, but they wanted concrete addresses, names, associations. It was it was pretty like heavy. Was the military even that heavy in information gathering?
No, not really.
Not really, exactly. So it was extensive for ridiculous reasons.
Yeah, I had a special interview for the military just because I was Cuban. My family was all born in
Well,
Cuba, and
I've
I was
heard
first
that.
person
Yeah,
born here.
those who
So
aren't U.S. born or of different nationalities do have to undergo different information gathering.
yeah,
It makes sense for military bases,
yeah.
not
Well,
for
just
casino
like
bases.
just like your organization, though, you want to make sure that you're hiring the right person, and a location with a lot of cash on hand, with the risk being quite high in the background. I mean, like you could be a porter, which is just like a cleaning person, and you can get into every room.
Yeah,
So like it doesn't.
with
I
the
I
with the
kind of get
granted
it.
clearances,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, but I kind of understand it.
I
You don't
understand
want to
to a
hire.
certain degree, but like,
It is a process. Like it is a
yes,
pain. So I
yes.
definitely get that.
And
But
like I was taught at an early life. Did I do this? No, but I was taught to keep records of everything
mm,
as I was getting older, and I did well with it, just not my addresses because we moved around so much. So, but that's so ridiculous to me. Put it in the description for the application what people are getting, and that way we know. They didn't start paying for holidays until most recently.
yeah.
And even then, it's not all federal holidays. It's only some. So it's like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, well, that's going to be a part of the benefits package. So that is less to do with the job requirements that an HR department's recruiting or hiring team would be in charge of, more on the benefits and compensation structure that
Yeah.
is developed, as well as the policies and procedures.
Yeah.
So a lot of times HR gets a bad rap because for the most part, HR doesn't decide the operations. The operations team, the CEO, COO, I mean the C-suite, along with, you know,
Yeah.
whatever like operations leadership is in the decision making process, they're the ones that really make that decision.
But HR is just the face of the.
HR is just the one that everyone gets to complain
Yeah.
to.
Well, HR, I've seen in a lot of companies, they tend to be mixed in with operations depending on the size of the company.
Yeah. Yeah.
So sometimes it does come down to the HR depending on if they're also fulfilling operation roles.
Yeah.
But
Could be. Yeah.
it
It
depends
definitely
on
depends.
the employment, the job location, or whatever it would be called.
For sure. Yeah. So, that's kind of the job requirement side of things. And then moving to the next stage of recruitment is going to be sourcing candidates. Do you have any experience on, or at least have an idea of what sourcing candidates would be on the HR side?
Very little. When it came to recruiting, I did not like the idea of recruiting. Um, Only because it seems like a sale pitch. I'm
Mm.
not a salesman. So when I used to be in the management role, I had very little to do with the actual hiring process.
Hmm.
Working way back when, I think it was 7, 8 years ago for a certain very small food place. I was the office manager, so I did have to hire people. So I put the job boards out there on not LinkedIn. Wow, we used to use it every day. Indeed. I used to put it out on Indeed. I even posted on Facebook when Facebook was getting bigger with the job postings. LinkedIn wasn't so popular just yet. Um, and I think, if I'm correct, I also put it on the Google page for that restaurant at the time.
Yeah.
And I would have the occasional interviews and so forth, but I never, called or went out to places having recruitment boards. Those are much bigger than the actual organization I was with at the
Hmm.
time, so it's very minuscule. I
Yeah.
wouldn't say I have any near experience like you did.
Well, I mean, even those are all great points. So basically, when it comes to sourcing candidates, the whole goal of it is just attracting candidates, just finding people who are interested in the roles that you have open. Like it's basically that simple. And you listed out a lot of great points using social media, using like certified job boards, LinkedIn. I didn't realize Facebook, but LinkedIn, Indeed, Dice. There's a lot of ones out there.
Oh, Dice! I didn't know about Dice.
Yeah, well, Dice is actually IT specific.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so there's
Oh,
a lot that are actually specific to the niche of their field. So it really comes down to if you're interested in jumping into a niche, you should actually look for a job board that is niche specific as well.
nice.
But yeah, so just things like that. You brought up career fairs.
Oh, and Monster. We used Monster at the
Yep,
time. Yeah.
Monster as well. Yeah, so there's a ton of really great ways to source candidates, and yeah, just in your little bit of experience, you use two or three of them. There's even more that HR departments use. I've been to career fairs. We are a recruiting agency now. At least that's one of our functions. Um,
High school and college is big.
yep,
Like
using
getting
like
people coming
internships
out the
as well as
doors.
third party um, like affiliations with other organizations. Absolutely. And then even employee referrals. For example, like, I built a team and I'd say like 90% of our team right now are all ones that have been recommended to me by someone
Oh
else.
yeah, that's how I got my current job.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
even just like employee referrals and things like that, those are all great ways to attract talent and even people that may not be looking for a job, which is really, I don't want to say always, but those are some of the best people. Like they've been in a job for a long time. Like they're not looking to leave because they're comfortable or whatever, but sometimes they're the ones that are the studs. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They're the ones that are the overachievers at work. So that's kind of where it comes to sourcing candidates. A lot of candidates themselves don't really understand the background that HR deals with when it comes to sourcing candidates. But yep, just knowing kind of some of those avenues will actually help you when you're looking for a job because you know what to do. You can go to a recruiting fair. When I was looking for a job, I will say I've never gone to a physical recruiting fair for myself.
Really?
Yeah, I never,
They came to
never.
our high schools.
Ah,
Yeah. So like one of my high schools was heavy on military
mm-hmm.
associations. So we constantly had military representatives come out, representative recruiter, sorry,
Yeah.
come out. They were on campus maybe 2, 3 times a week.
Hmm.
And that's not even counting our officers who were taking care of teaching our classes. But we had a career fair about twice a month at that particular high school. Very big on career development, and then at the next high school, still big on career development, but not so much of the military association,
Mm-hmm.
but the more of the the sorry the careers that weren't necessarily just trades, but a little bit further out into other fields that you would need those longer degrees. Kind of circling back on the last podcast, but yeah, the trade and the military were one high school. The more heavy degrees, such as having to get your doctrines, was the other high school, and
Nice.
then even college.
But yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, stuff like that though. Those are all great avenues for a candidate to use as a tool to source. I'm sorry, as a HR department to source candidates, as well as a candidate to look for their ideal job or their ideal fit.
yeah,
So the next stage of recruiting would really be screening and recruiting applications. So when it comes to screening your applications, I mean, sifting through resumes, checking out the qualifications, going through, all of the data and all of that information. Do you have, I know you said that you recruited a little bit. So kind of what was it like for you to go through having to sift through a lot of like paperwork?
Um, it wasn't too difficult because it was a very They were very basic roles that need to be met, such as cook, driver, a hybrid role such as cook and driver. So they weren't super heavy. I wasn't looking for a lot. Open up a resume, check your experience years, see your background. I remember I did hire a new office manager to fill my role because I was nearing the end of my pregnancy at the
Mm-hmm.
time, and she was relatively new to the workforce, but the way she held herself in her interview, her educational background, she was fresh into college, still held a very good standing in high school and early college levels,
Mm-hmm.
and she did have a part-time job. I was like, that's enough. I don't need a lot. It was a hole in the wall restaurant. It was nothing big. So it was enough to show me. There was another driver that, for whatever reason, she applied to a driving role without a vehicle. So she said that if I get this job, then I can get a car. Well, I need something guaranteed now.
No, for sure. I mean, she wanted to get her steps in, obviously.
Right. There was, and I will bluntly admit this. Your appearance and how you hold yourself in hygiene is huge, and she didn't do very well in those categories. So when she approached me for the interview, it I was taken back by particular odors. And the way she appeared was also a little difficult to kind of push through the interview.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so to candidates who are applying to jobs, please be mindful of how you appear. I don't need you in a suit and tie unless the job calls for it. But to be completely messy applying for a food role and you're not carrying yourself well, I don't know where she was coming from. Maybe she was living on the streets. I don't know. She didn't express anything, but it was kind of hard to kind of deal with that
Mm.
while in the restaurant interviewing her.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, definitely appearance is huge. It's, your first impressions matter 100%.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to screening, a lot of organizations, they actually use keyword searches and when it comes to their screening. And that's one of the ways that a lot of the big organizations will sift through thousands of resumes very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So having worked in HR, I will say we do not look at every resume. Like
Oh, for sure.
that's just how it
Yeah.
is. If the resume is too cluttered, if I cannot find any like key breaks in the way that it's spaced out, if the if any like in particular information like spelling or grammar errors, if there's like all those are taken into account when it comes to resumes. Now, in using tools like as in like screening tools, doing keyword search and stuff like that, like I'll use LinkedIn as an example. If you're just trying to kind of get used to it, LinkedIn is pretty cool because they have some free options as far as like posting a job.
Mm-hmm.
But they'll have automatic questions, and you can make certain questions as a requirement. And if they don't meet that requirement, you'll automatically sift them out. So you've got like your hard nose, which if they don't have the whatever, if they don't have a specific attribute that you're looking for, automatically wipes them off the table, or a maybe. But if you have like 1,000, uh, you know, applicants, you don't really want to sift through 500 maybes. If you have 20 for sure yeses, you're just looking at those.
Mm-hmm.
So really identifying based off of the original job requirements and then making sure that your resume, which is a pain, you have to make each resume unique. You have to actually go back in and change your resume to match the job description. And it's extra work. Like I'll be honest, but that is, and it comes to a point where like, you don't want to lie on your resume,
Right.
but if you're working in a location for a certain amount of time frame, you only have so much space to write about all the experience you have.
Yeah.
Maybe one area of the job wasn't necessarily your main focus, doesn't like really pertain to this specific job, but you did have a side thing that you were doing also in the same location with the same time frame. Push that forward.
Yeah.
For example, you were not necessarily working directly with IT, but you help the library with a lot of their tech and their computer stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great thing to push forward. It may have not been your specific core job, but it's something that you did. You did it frequently. You did it long enough.
Yeah.
You worked with hardware. You worked with the software on it. So,
And I found out that IT was where I wanted to be.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So pushing that forward, even if it was a smaller piece of it, like I said, don't lie on it. You don't want to put yourself in a position where you get a job, you are not qualified for the job, you make all these promises, you get the position, and now you're out of luck. Like you have no clue what you're doing. But, changing your resume to match the specifics that they are requiring, that is the main way that you're going to get seen.
Yeah.
I mean, out of 1,000 resumes, maybe 50 will actually get looked at
Yeah.
for one specific position. And that's really pushing it. Like it probably won't even be a full 50 just because there's so many. And even when you are sifting through all those resumes, you're really looking top down. You're giving I'll usually read the bio or like the about section, the very top. I'll look at the education, any extra skills they have, and then experience. And that's really it. Like there's not much else that I'm looking at. And even then, if the like last one or two things of experience don't directly relate to the role that we're hiring them for, like you're out of it. Like
Yeah.
it's it. Like it's there's so many people out there, like you have to make yourself stand out. And this is something really important for candidates looking for a job to understand this, as well as recruiters understanding that,
Mm.
like, these are still people. You should be letting them know if they didn't get the job.
Yes.
You should be sending them an email if they are not
At
qualified.
least let them know that something was rejected, or unfortunately you don't fit something.
Yeah,
Something.
absolutely.
Don't let someone like waste their time. I don't know about you when you're job hunting, but when I'm job hunting, I'm filling out multiple applications. I fill out this one and I hope I get it, you know?
Yeah, no, for
So,
sure.
like if you're job hunting, you need to be filling out multiple, fitting the resume like you said,
Hmm.
per the role. But don't get hung up on one position that your heart is set to, because if it doesn't work out, then you waste all this time that you could have filled out a job application that may be similar to that role and you could have got that one. And maybe now that other role is filled with someone else.
Yeah. Another really big thing when it comes to screening and, like you said, applying to a lot of different roles is you won't find out. Like you usually, as a candidate, you don't find out for quite some time whether or not you got the role or not. Like
Yeah.
there's no point in waiting. Like look at other roles out there,
Keep it moving.
push stuff out. I will say one really big thing. I've noticed this a lot more recently. Now, I don't want to mix it now that the internet's big, but now that like there's a lot more job boards and things like that, like there's a lot of more avenues to reach out. And because of that, remote and national work is like way over. Like you're going against 20,000 people or 30,000
You are
candidates.
literally competing with people around the world.
Exactly. As opposed to if you're looking for something in your specific area that meets that specific job's requirements, it'll be much less. So I will put that out there as a disclaimer. Like, if you are searching for a job, even an entry level job, or a mid-level job, let's say you're trying to go up, you know, don't necessarily look at the national reach. Although there are a ton of positions out there, there's also a ton of people looking for work.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I was applying for a remote job because that was my goal, and it was specifically to be, in HR. And every application I would put in, no less than about 50,000 applicants. And these were like national, big companies or small companies, all of them. And that's one cool thing about LinkedIn. LinkedIn shows you how many candidates you're going up against.
Yeah, I like that.
If you have their premier account or whatever, it'll even show you kind of like how your information goes up against the other one. So that would be good if you've never looked at like other people's resumes and stuff like that. That might help you out because it gives you a better idea. It gives you a reality check. Maybe
It
you're not
does.
as good as you think you
Yeah.
are. Um, or it could just be something as simple as maybe your stuff just doesn't, you didn't write it down as well as you probably could have. So that's a lot of the screening side. A lot of them are tools to be used, not necessarily like a person a tool, but
No, I got you. I got you.
yeah. So the next up would be conducting the interviews. as you already stated, it's your first time of someone looking at you. Like this is your first chance to be stand out, to be noticed, to be somewhat unique. And another big thing with this is understanding what the purpose of the interview really is. Is it one of four interviews? Is it your one and only interview? Is it an interview for a position that they are looking to hot fill? So they're looking to like fill seats in really quickly? Or is it like one really key position? Like all those kind of tell you how much studying you got to do. You got to understand the company. You got to know at least a little bit about the history. You've got to make sure that if they ask you a question, you are ready for it. And that can be prepping, that can be
Mm-hmm.
practicing interviews, that can be talking with other hiring managers, going on LinkedIn and talking to other hiring managers in that company just to ask for advice. Like, hey, I'm interested in this role. I don't want, any special treatment or anything like that. I'm just curious. Can you tell me a little bit about how the process works? For the most part, hiring managers are usually pretty like open and they're usually down to talk.
Yeah.
Um, so they would be fine
Well,
to
they're
have that
also very
conversation.
used to coaching people too.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. So, but things like that will make you stand out. And if you talk to someone from that company and you're like, hey, I was interested in this position, like I said, I'm not looking for anything crazy, but I would love to just know what the hiring process is like. What are some common questions that are usually asked? How could I best prep for this interview?
hmm
Those
did
are
you
pretty simple.
did you know you can find them now? If you Google the right terms, you can find the hiring questions that
Yep.
will be asked. And I found it interesting because I didn't know this until the last job I was working at,
Hmm.
that someone did do exactly that. They looked up the hiring questions, they memorized it like to the key, scored a perfect score on their interview. But when it came time to doing the job, they didn't know what they were doing. They were lost in the water. They were so desperate to get in,
Yep.
but didn't take the time to learn even some of the basics. And I'm talking about going in Active Directory and changing a password for someone.
And see, for me, I have no idea what that means. Like, I mean, like I understand the basics,
Yeah, yeah.
ish, but yeah, like I get it. That's kind of one of the things where like it's two different fields. Like if you don't understand something, something that may seem basic to someone
It's wild.
else is not. But if you're hired on to do that job,
You need to know. At
for
least do
sure.
the basics. I mean, come on.
Yep.
But it is you're right, the internet has changed how we hire, how we look at resumes, because when I was doing it, we didn't have that type of software or anything to help sift down the resumes. Now maybe it was just because the organization was so small, we didn't necessarily need that,
Mm.
but having to sift through them by myself, it was a little rough. At the time, Indeed was just coming out with ways to narrow down the candidates, and it would show this one possesses everything you're looking for, this one has some, this one has none. So it helped anyone who had none. I was like, no, thank you. I did send them a message. I went ahead and created a message, sent it out to each individual I denied
Mm.
for the position, and then I would call whoever was considered. But, and I say this because some people are a little too entitled with this. When sending out a message that they were declined for the position,
Hmm.
I have had some saying, "Well, I didn't even get an interview because your application didn't fit the bill."
Yeah.
But there were some nasty messages that when I was reading them, I'm like, "Oh, I am glad I did not bring you on," because this even shows me
Yeah.
for those who apply and they get a notification from the job application has been received, and it's a few days in, you still haven't received a notice that you've been declined. Some places don't send them at all, like you stated. I would recommend you email that organization, find out the HR email if you can, and just let them know, thank you for letting me apply. Just wanted to let you know that I'm still interested in the position, something like that. If you get the interview, you should have someone's in email. And if you're still interested in that position, day two, day three, email them. If you really want that job, email them. Don't harass them. There's a difference, but let them know I'm still here. I'm still interested. I'm 100% in. Just letting you know I still exist. Obviously, don't say that in your email. be professional, and write something along the lines about the position and how excited you are you want to join the team. But that's just something I looked for as a manager.
Hmm.
And even when I wasn't a manager, but I was assisting others going through their applications, that's still something I would point out.
No, and honestly, that is a great point. Yeah. Because that's the difference between a single, very quick review of someone's interview to me being like, oh, this person messaged me directly. Oh, okay. Let me see what's their name. Let me see where they're at. And it at least gives you a second consideration.
Yes.
Like, even if you're absolutely not qualified, I will probably look at your information again just from the fact of you reaching back out to me. So that is actually a very great point to put up.
Do you remember um, the high school that I worked at? Do you remember my interview process?
Not really.
Okay, let me tell you. Got an interview. Super excited. It was the high school of my dreams. I went to school there. I loved it. I wanted to become part of the team. I drilled the principal who was not the principal, but the assistant principal who was interviewing me. There's multiple of them. Don't worry about pinpointing. But I wanted to make sure that was also still the place I wanted to be at. And he gave me wonderful feedback. But my education didn't meet the requirements that they wanted it to be at. Super low paying job. They wanted a master's. I had a bachelor's. I was working on my master's. No problem. Took it in stride. He gave me wonderful feedback. It was also one of my mentors as a student. I was fine with it. I see that same position is still open 2 weeks later. I apply again because I'm dedicated. I want to be there. I want to be in there. He sees that, interviews me a second time. I get the position on the table. If you want something in a good way, let me stress that, go for it. If you have the drive, don't give up. By showing that to them, they're more inclined to bring you on. If you see a position that you applied for, maybe you interviewed just like I did, but you didn't get it, and you see it's still there a week or two later, do it again. I'm giving you the encouragement to do it again. Don't stop. You want to be there. If you show them your true colors and they gave you positive feedback the first time, keep going. I'm just saying. People give up too fast.
Yeah, no, I that's another great point for sure. If you see someone, on the recruiter side, if you see someone who applies the same position 3 times, and maybe their education or maybe their qualifications or, something is a little bit off, like you see that they're willing, like you see that they're motivated. Like the chances of someone applying to the same position 2 or 3 times, going through the interview process, going through everything, showing up, and then not caring up about the position,
Mm,
that would be pretty shocking, if
mm-hmm.
anything, to me. Like you went through all these steps. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've had it. I've had someone
Oh, yeah.
like I've had a few that I would interview. They go through the process, they get the job, and then they just like no call, no show for like the first
Oh,
week
that
or
drives me
whatever or stuff like
crazy.
that. And I'm like, you went through all this effort. Like
Or
you went
even
through all
during the
these
interview,
steps.
like you could tell they don't care.
Yeah.
Don't waste my time.
Well, I'm talking about the ones that do like they interview great.
Oh,
Like yeah, that's what I'm
really?
talking about. They interview great. They go through everything. They get the job, and then they're just like, I'm not really interested. And I'm like, why
Or
did you
you
go?
later find out that they took a job elsewhere. Just please let me know.
Yeah,
Let me know.
yeah,
Why am I calling your phone trying to find out why you didn't show up to your first shift?
no, for
You
sure.
know? Or in case scenario and most recent, a personal reference for a job was looking for a job, set them up for success, push them through to get hired, not responding to text, Facebook messages, phone calls, nothing. To then later find out from a different colleague that they got a job elsewhere.
Mm,
Come
yep, no, I get it. So going towards assessing candidates, there's a lot of different ways to assess a candidate as well as time frame. So this really kind of just depends on the position itself. A lot of organizations during the sourcing candidates portion, like before or at least during the process of the application itself, they'll have like little test like
on. I
questions
hate
or
them.
they'll have like a 40-minute long like testing thing with multiple videos, a personality assessment and stuff like
Yeah, I
that.
hate them.
I mean, they work, cognitive tests, personality assessments, job simulations. Like they are good ways for an HR department to get an understanding
Listen.
of a person's qualifications, not just a sheet of paper, but seeing an actual test to validate. You could say you're great at math, but then if I put a question 2 plus 2 in front of you and you can't answer it, like there's
Obviously,
so.
that's an exaggerated sample, but I get what you're coming from.
But that's kind of one of the benefits of assessing the candidate.
I do not agree, and here's why.
Okay.
The reason why I don't agree is because I have worked with people who have done the same assessment. Specifically, let's talk about those personality assessments. They pass with flying colors. They are the golden child. Come to work with them, and they are the nastiest people you got to deal with. How do we know this? Because on the assessment, of course, you're going to put what you think your boss wants to know. Of course, you're going to answer what they want in that workplace. But come working in the workplace, and when I tell you the nastiest people, I so heartedly mean it. I'm talking about constantly sarcastic, not doing their job, putting it on somebody else. That's job management, whatever. But the side comments, what is that called? Beating around the bush,
Mm-hmm.
where they'll make a comment but not directly, or they go out of their way to make your work um, overtaxing.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting to see, or even some of the assessments that are more knowledge based, and you look at the person and you're like, I don't know how you made it here, but you don't belong here because their knowledge is not meeting even the bare minimum of the requirements.
Yeah.
Or maybe they were at one point, but it's so outdated that they don't really have a purpose anymore
Yeah.
because they're not keeping themselves up to date. It's so easy to just Google those questions or even have someone else take it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Those questions were a good idea when they came out, but people quickly realize how to work the system. So realistically, it comes down to you have to have an interview with that person.
I mean, no, I'm definitely not saying that you should be doing the assessments in lieu of the interview. It's just an additional step. I will say I get where you're coming from. I do agree that there are certainly people that do that. That doesn't negate the benefits of it. Because one, it shows you're willing to put in 40 to an hour extra, like 40 minutes an extra hour of work just to get this one job. Like that
Mm-hmm.
shows commitment. Two, you at least go through the steps and through all of the information to go through it. You have to do research. You have to sit there and you have to think through these questions. You know, it's like saying, because someone's going to break the law, we shouldn't have laws.
Oh, wasn't that a movie?
I don't know.
Like they're gonna break the law, so let's go terminate them before they do.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That was the Tom Cruise movie.
Yeah, I don't remember what it's called.
But yeah, so just because people certainly do that doesn't mean that it's still not effective. It's just not 100%. But nothing's 100%.
So I have a question then.
Yeah.
For those who have been working in their job 20, 30, 40, I mean like they have been there for a
Mm-hmm.
long time. Should they go through a rehiring process while working there? Here's why I ask you that. The casino, we had too many people not knowing how to read. They could count because that was part of their job. They
Mm-hmm.
could count to their heart's content. You put a piece of paper in front of them, hardly could read at a kindergarten level. Or certain people in different roles, like I said, hired for one thing, outdated, couldn't do some of the basic stuff of the new roles. Change the password, couldn't do it. Marketing, what are they doing? Billboards are so out of date that people aren't even aware what they're referencing to because marketing hasn't taken care of them yet. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, again, should they go through a rehiring process?
I think a rehiring process could be a good idea. It really just depends on the position itself and the way it works. Someone not being able to read, having a rehiring process may not necessarily be the right step. For example, you could do an education phase. You could do, training, offering that as a benefit, offering possibly like a GED or offering additional, training for them in it. When it comes, to sourcing a candidate and going through the assessment product, you're looking for someone who's good from the beginning. When you have someone who's been on the team for a long time, typically the reason why they become inept in their role or unable to change is because the leadership allows that to happen.
Yeah, I can see that.
At the end of the day, it kind of comes into, you know, an HR department, the CEO, we can't see every person. They still have the managers who's in charge of their team. If the manager knows that this is a widespread issue, or if the manager knows that there's one or two people that have a problem, and then they allow that problem to keep going for 20 plus years, like, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
is rehiring someone after 20 plus years the best idea? Or at least having them go through that process, or is it really the fault of the manager? And then it becomes an issue of, well, now the next step. So for that being the situation, there's a lot of different things that you could go through,
It's
going
just
through
not a
like
yes
team
or no
members.
question.
Yeah, exactly. It would definitely be case by case basis. But that's a great point, though. Maybe I'll do a little bit of research, and I certainly have a few experiences in the past of working with team members that weren't very effective. So yeah, I'm sure we could definitely have another podcast solely based off that.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to managing the selection process, so we've kind of gone through a lot of the selection process so far, but a lot of times it's not just one person doing all the hiring.
Right.
There's a lot of different
Hands in the pot.
steps. Exactly. So facilitating that communication between the candidates, the hiring managers, going through the entire process, updating, providing the reviews, um, all that really needs to be managed pretty well. And I've noticed that's one of the main issues and one of the main reasons why people don't get emails when they don't get the job,
Hmm.
when they don't get, uh, you know, information stating that unfortunately you did not get the role, or if they did get the role, but it's been 2 weeks and no one reached out to them telling them that they were hired. Like that's
Yes. Oh my
absolutely also
gosh. I
happened.
had that happen to me too. It was 2 months. Two
Yep.
months for me applying. I still took the job. But it's sometimes it's crazy. You remember on one of the jobs you applied for, you were under consideration, air quotes, for what, half a year or something like
Yeah, it
that?
was like a full 12 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was for an HR role, and you were like, man, this is probably why they should hire me.
Yeah, yeah. No, for sure. But yeah, maintaining that process, that is a team effort. And it's
Yes.
very important that an entire team is involved in it. So when it comes to onboarding orientation, so this is going to be the next step, the stage of someone actually getting the job.
Hmm.
When it comes to onboarding, there's a lot of very important parts where it comes to it. So tell me a little bit about your experience as far as onboarding goes.
I've had the best of it and I've had the worst of it because of how many jobs I have under my belt and uh the different, not necessarily roles, but fields, because of the different fields I've been in. I've seen some big nays. I'm talking about hard no's that they should be doing in onboarding. And some that I was like, why isn't everyone doing this? I will say on the onboarding processes though, I don't think it should take a week long.
Mm.
And maybe there are some that do have to go an extensive, and I'm not talking about for everybody. Obviously, if you're an intern for a surgical department, you're going to have a long onboarding because that internship is going to be a while because, multiple steps in that. I don't know the ins and outs of it. But if I'm coming on as a support technician, even a customer service rep, should not take me a week to be able to say, yeah, I know how to answer a phone and I know how to put in information in the system. A day at max. I think the whole time variance or depends on the role, but it should not take so long for most of these entry level positions. And I understand that they are trying to train their people as best as possible and also to make sure that no one can say they did not get the best of the training. But if you gotta make it that long and you want to fit that bill, then maybe something, just maybe, is not right in your training. Reshape your training. Some other onboardings. there should not be so many people involved in onboarding. You got your mentor and maybe your manager involved, obviously your coworkers, but not part of the onboarding process itself. Um, I've had onboarding where my direct department isn't the only one influencing it, but I'm dealing with sales, marketing, culinary. I shouldn't have to be dealing with them during onboarding. And it's not just communicating, like saying, hey, I'm your new team member. No, no, no. When I'm onboarding, I've actually been behind a counter in culinary and they're like, oh, this is how we make this. Why am I learning that in IT department? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Keep it relevant. What other categories could I probably touch on that? My memory escapes me.
No
But the
worries.
moment I hear it, I'm going to be like, oh my gosh.
Well, I mean, yeah, so that's definitely interesting stuff. I will say onboarding and orientation are two different things. So, onboarding is basically welcoming someone into the team, and then the entire process of them like joining the organization up to them being like fully functioning members of the team.
Do you know those two get melted in so often?
Yeah, for
That
sure.
onboarding and welcoming, or what was it called?
Orientation.
Orientation. They always feel like the same thing. And most people just think that one word is just for the other thing.
Mhm.
Onboarding and orientation. The only difference that I see, that I have seen, is that when you're onboarding, that's typically where you're signing off all your paperwork. And then orientation's the training. But the reason why I said they get melted is that I always had people come in while I'm signing my paperwork and they're already trying to train me on the stuff that I'll be doing.
Mm.
When that should be waiting until I'm done and I have my focus on you.
Yeah.
I understand you want me to multitask, but you need to back off a little bit.
I got you. But yeah, so that's kind of the definition of onboarding. Orientation is really the first day. It's the first welcome aboard, and it's this is what you need to know. This is where we're at. This is where you're going to be working. All right. So that's kind of the differences. Onboarding is the full spectrum of you are
Mm.
a stranger to you are now part of the full team, and orientation is
Mm-hmm.
basically like a small piece of that understanding kind of what gets put into it.
Yeah, and it is important to have that. By the way,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you said this is where you're working. This is who you'll be working with. I have seen that they don't always cover that,
Mm-hmm.
and you really are lost in the sauce.
Yeah.
So, making sure that people know their point of contact, their what is it, their directive, everything has to be made clear. And I know some organizations disagree. They think that you should always hit the ground running. Can't hit the ground if the ground ain't there. So I need you to make sure it's there, and then I will take it from there.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
No, for sure. I got you. Yeah. So my vision of onboarding, the best way to handle it is about a 1 to 2 day process. But
Why? Why
that's
so long?
only the beginning.
What do
The
you mean?
full onboarding process should be about 6 months.
What? Wait a minute. Is this 6 months? When you say onboarding, is this your grace period to screw up and whatnot?
No, no, it's not. It's not like your probationary period. It's like a time frame that you're given a mentor. It's the whole time frame that you have the time to ask any
Okay, then that's
questions.
too long.
That's
Wait,
onboarding.
is this for a specific field? Because if you're at a certain pizza joint and it takes you 6 months to get down how to make a standard cheese pizza right, we got a problem. You shouldn't be there for 6 months.
So this is a general onboarding template that I actually wrote. I wrote an article on it, and I wrote a generalized template for how an onboarding should be structured. The orientation is about 1 to 2 days. The full onboarding process is a full 6 month period. So I'll give you a quick breakdown, quick overview of kind of like what it was. So first off, there's pre-onboarding. So pre-onboarding is actually before day one, so before they step on the premises. So they should be getting their offer letter and hiring paperwork. This is usually about 2 weeks before their first day. This gives them enough time frame to read through it, make sure that they're getting the pay that they had agreed to, making sure that they have all the paperwork, can ask any questions about the benefits, can ask any questions about pretty much anything before they actually start working. Next up would be the onboarding packet and the welcome letter. So this is just like a generalized little welcome packet that we would like to create and provide to them. That's about a week before. And then 2 days before, emailing the first day expectations, like what they need to bring, where exactly they're going to be meeting, possibly a map if they haven't already gone there for the interview process, things like that. Um, so then going to day one. Day one is really, and day one and day two, I put them separate, but they really could be one. It depends on how much you want to stuff in one day. The true best way to handle it is you want them to really retain the information. Like, this isn't information that they can just pump and dump. Like, they're going to want to know this for the long term. So if you put a full 20 hours of information in one 8-hour session of training, do you really think that they're going to be able to learn all that and memorize it?
Is this onboarding or orientation though? Because training should not be in onboarding.
Well, remember, onboarding is the entire process of them completely being welcomed. Orientation is the time frame that they get brought on. Compliance training, all that is kind of a part of that orientation. Like I said, it's two pieces, but both of them are needed to succeed. So this is all part of the onboarding process. Orientation is just a small snippet of it, of like day one to day two is kind of like that orientation. So ensuring that that there's someone that's responsible for them, a mentor who's typically their same level. You don't necessarily want them to have a supervisor as their mentor because you want someone they can feel comfortable talking to. If you're brand new to an organization, you're going to feel a lot more comfortable talking to someone who is in your exact situation
Yeah.
versus the, department head.
Yeah.
Having them go out to a lunch or, offering lunch for your team, just getting them to feel welcomed, giving them a tour of the entire building, ensuring that they understand the rest areas, where the vending machines are located and things like that. If there's any discounts, gym memberships, and kind of some side benefit stuff, that's the time to let them know is on day one. Giving them time to meet and greet with very key personnel, even if they are in different departments. A lot of times in IT, you would have to talk to a lot of different people, not just in
Everyone.
one specific, not just in your specific department. So having that understanding and not being the first time you meet someone is when you're putting out a fire. Isn't that a lot nicer to have that discussion?
Well, I will admit this. In quite a bit of jobs, I've always met almost everyone in leadership. I say almost because I don't think I've ever met a business owner except for in one position. But I've met mostly executives. If they have a C-suite, I've met almost everyone. Mainly because my first week, I've had to change their passwords. You'd be surprised. But in certain roles, I don't think it's necessary. If I'm, when I used to work for a certain company that was known for its fries, I didn't need to know who the CEO was or the top leads. All I need to know is who's my directed manager, and that's pretty much it at that time. Because working for a fast food joint, you don't need to know everybody out there. That's why I was asking you, who is this directed to? Because not everyone needs a chart like this.
Yeah, I would say this is for, really for most organizations. For example, I'm a general manager of a store. I want my team knowing who I am.
Is
Even
it a
if I
big
don't
chain
work.
or a small chain? If it's a small, I would totally understand that because everybody's got to work together. If it's big, though, they got so many people working in the smaller fields that you really don't need to know. If you're a business owner, once you are overly populated, I won't need to know you. Not, obviously
Yeah,
I'm your wife, but if I was just some like little person that was working your customer service rep, I don't need to know you directly. I know your face, I know your title. That's about it because it's on your website.
I actually want to change that.
Okay.
So when I do grow Omni HR into a very large organization, if we do have in-person or seminars and stuff like that, I actually do want to be able to engage with my team,
Why?
no matter what level
Can you
they
give
are.
me a quick answer why?
A quick answer would be they, at an entry level role, are important to the organization. And too much are large companies not care about their smaller team members. Just
Very well.
because you only deal with, let's say one problem and you focus on one problem and that is it. You're in this small little, cube in this massive box. That is important. If that doesn't function, or if you don't see how your specific job involves in the greater scheme of things, you think it's not important. When in actuality, if your piece isn't there, then the whole thing tumbles down.
Very well.
And that's for every position. If I had a cashier has to run the money. They have to make sure they're accurate. They are also the face of the company. They are the person who, anytime someone comes up, they are looking right at you. They have
Yeah,
conversations.
that's true.
So
Very
this
good points.
idea that, an entry level person doesn't matter, I actually disagree with that. No matter who you are
Well,
in
I
an
didn't say they
organization.
don't matter. I said
Well,
knowing
yeah,
their leadership probably doesn't matter.
but I
But
think that knowing where you are in the grander scheme of things, including knowing your leadership, I think that does matter because it builds a culture of respect from top down and bottom up.
very well. That's probably why a certain coffee joint is experiencing a lot of boycotts right now. Anyway, continue.
All right. The other thing on day one that I would want to go over is the organization's culture. So the vision, the mission, the values, ensuring that everyone understands where they fit, um, and kind of just stuff like that. And then ensuring that they have the ability to have access to everything they want. So kind of making sure that if they need computer access, if they need a specific setup, they all get that completely taken care of on day one. So that way, when they actually start legitimately working, they don't have issues with it. So day two or day one, depending on how you want to structure it, was going to end up with all of your compliance training. Excuse me. That would include, workplace safety, diversity, anti-harassment, all the things that an organization would have to go through. All that gets taken care of on then as well. Um, Getting connected with their buddy or their mentor from that department, having a one-on-one with their specific manager.
Yes.
All that would happen on day two, where they're able to kind of get a path for growth as well. If I have someone who's joining me and they're like, yeah, I'm only going to be here for the next 3 months and after that I'm out of here. It's like, cool. Well, did you know that you can franchise this little store? Or did you know that if you grew to this point, you had all these different options? Did you know that we pay for college? Did you know, you
Which
know,
when jobs do have that set up, that I need to tell y'all, it is very important and it's wonderful because when they do have um while you're working there, you can get free tuition. There are a lot of places out there, and if you just ask, you might be able to get it. And if they don't, you might even get a discount if your job's willing to reimburse you because you're going towards a degree that'll benefit them. Like if you express that you're going to make a career out of them, let them know.
yeah,
I didn't find this out though until I was done with my bachelor's, and that's where most jobs cut off their education funding.
yeah.
But if I had known that I could have gotten that, totally would have exploited it.
Well, see, in my opinion, that's something that you should disclose on day one. That's one of the benefits of onboarding
Well,
and
on
going
day
through the
one, I wasn't
benefits.
going to plan to stay with a fry franchise for 5 years. I didn't know I was going to stay with them for 5 years.
Correct, but if you saw a path forward, if you saw that this wasn't just a dead end thing, even as an entry level, wouldn't that possibly change
Yes.
some ideas for
Well,
you?
you remember when I was there, I mentioned I was going to college. They knew I was going to college. That on the weekends I would come back to work.
Mm.
Um, it was a lot going on. Just keeping it quick though. I would come back on Friday night, work a 20-hour shift on Saturday, 20 hours on Sunday, go back during the week to work college. Management knew that. Business owner knew that because he and I were in touch because I was in management as well.
Mhm.
Business owner knew us because he franchised the property.
Yeah,
But at no point did they tell me that there was this massive university dedicated to their workers. And I didn't find out until I was already done with
yeah,
my first degree and I moved on from them and I moved on to a different college anyway. So I was annoyed, I'll admit that. But I should have expressed it to where it I showed interest in building with them and education. So you know what I mean?
yeah,
I didn't open my mouth. I was too young and ignorant. I didn't open my mouth and I didn't say the things that I needed to say.
yeah. I mean, I, you know, eh, hindsight is 2020. I'll say that. So seeing stuff in the rear
And I was
always
blind.
makes more sense. But if they had brought this information up to you in the front, you could have completely changed your plans. Not saying
Oh, for
that
sure.
where you're at now is, positive or negative compared to that decision, but that's why 2 days of onboarding, going through benefits, going through the structure, going through and making sure that you're comfortable. Also, it increases the level of work that you put out on day one.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you are comfortable, I've spoken to you, you have an open dialogue with your leadership, you've seen who it is who's, 5 steps above you,
Mm-hmm.
you see a path forward, you see the benefits of everything, you're sold. Like you're bought in to the dream. And the person who does that versus the person who is like, I'm going to do this for 3 months. And then when I'm done with that, forget this place. Like that's a completely different person, and that's one of the reasons why having this 2-day onboarding set up like this is, in my opinion, super beneficial. So that's kind of how it goes. The orientation is going to be 1 to 2 days. The rest of the onboarding, like week one, they'll have kind of like a touch base. Then at 30 days, at 90, and then at the 6 month time frame, they would do one final connection. Um, and that's really how it works.
Is this
And
your setup for Omni?
this is, well, yeah, this is my setup for Omni. This is also my setup that I when I wrote my personal little article that I published.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
So I'm
I just think that
curious.
this would be the best function.
Would you run into any legality issues? Is that a word?
Yeah.
Okay. Would you run into any legality issues if someone was terminated during their onboarding phase and the state covers what is the word? Unemployment if you're fired during onboarding.
Well, you would still have probation phase. So those are two separate things. It also depends
Oh.
on the state themselves. Some are like an at-will state, which means you can get fired for pretty much anything. Others are not. So it really just depends on the local legislation as well as kind of the structure of the company.
Hmm.
Um, but they don't necessarily relate to each other.
Okay. And
Yeah.
it wouldn't really hold up well in a legal debate that they could say I was still in my onboarding when I got terminated and I wasn't fully aware of all the company's ins and outs of what was allowed, what wasn't allowed, what were expectations. So, not looking at your company because you're
Yeah.
going to be dealing with much higher developments, but looking at something that maybe it is someone in the low of the entry level, would this hold up in a legal debate?
Yeah, it wouldn't change anything. If anything, it would be better because you can say, oh, well, they actually had this handbook and everything given them 2 weeks before they even stepped foot on the premises.
Which, by the way, always read the handbook.
Yeah,
I,
but like,
I learned my hard way.
but
Learned the hard way.
things like that would actually, this would help that situation because of that. Oh, well, they received their handbook, which they signed and guaranteed that they read and followed the rules 2 weeks before they stepped foot on the premises. On day one, we went over the locations they could be at, the specific rules and all of the regulations.
Hmm.
Day one. Day one and two, they had a mentor that they were to be able to ask any questions if they had any concerns. They had open dialogue with their leadership if they had any issues. They were also had full training with compliance and all advanced level trainings through that time frame. So
I can see that. Okay.
yeah, if anything, going through those things is actually even better than just a normal organization that isn't really paying much attention and is just like, you know, good luck. I believe in you. Deuces.
Okay. I can see that.
So that's my opinion on onboarding and orientation. We
I still don't agree with the time, but it's also because I'm not up there. You know what I'm saying? I'm down here.
yeah.
So if my onboarding was 6 months, I probably won't want to be there. But again, I'm kind of like in a meager level of my work.
Well, but even then, when you say it like that, the onboarding may be 6 months, but it's really just touching base. It's not like you're a new employee for
Oh,
six
so you don't have to
months.
deal with this every single day. You
No,
do
it's
you do all the
one to
nitty
two
gritty in the
days.
beginning. Okay.
It's 1 to 2 days.
Thank you for helping my little mind.
Then you do the work, and then while you're working, you have set time frames at the 30 day, 60 day, and then 6 month time frame. Or I'm sorry,
So
30
those are
and 90.
considered more like reviews, like
They're like check-ins, yeah. So
okay.
it's to make sure that, hey, are you comfortable? Like, is there anything that you're having an issue with? Is there any way that, from this process that we've had that you still have questions with? Is there anything that you are concerned about? Do you know what the path forward for you would be? Like, it's kind of like that. It's setting you up for future success long term versus you just thinking that you're, not important. Like, it's basically your leadership telling you, hey, you are important.
Hmm.
This is why you're important. We want to make sure that you succeed because of your importance, you know, and having an open dialogue. The actual orientation is 1 to 2 days.
That opens my mind up then, and I do accept the way you have it mapped out. It makes so much more sense, and I guess it just didn't click right away, but
Yeah,
it did click now, and I can see that being um not just successful but very beneficial to the actual employee.
yeah.
So yeah, I agree with that then. I take away that whole 1 to 2 days because now that I think about it, I'm a very needy person, even in the work environment. So if my employer doesn't show some sort of care, when however long I'm working there, I probably won't want to stay there.
Yeah, exactly. And like right now, brand engagement and the way that the culture is, the way that companies view, or I'm sorry, the candidates or current employees view the organization, that matters more
Yeah.
than the salary. It matters more than the compensation structure. And
Yes.
the reason I say that is because, people have options. You
Yep.
could stay home and stream and make, whatever, how much money.
And I'm just saying, when you notice your employees are doing well, doing a pizza day on Friday is probably not the best thing to show that you appreciate them. That's something you do with school kids. You know what I'm saying?
um, well, I can see that for a certain frame. It's almost like a test in the beginning because you want to see like, hey, like what is it that you enjoy? Because employee engagement is very important. But I would recommend talking to the team members, like putting out you know, having regular pulse surveys and things like that to be like, hey, we're thinking about having whatever Margarita Mondays. Would you guys be down?
Maybe
You
not in the workplace
know,
though. Let's
but
do that after hours.
I think a pizza day or a day where we bring in, like I'll bring a barbecue out and we'll barbecue outside
See,
on a
but
week
that's
or something like
nice
that.
though because there pizza has developed a bad rep in the workplace because everyone knows that when you're constantly asking for a raise, you don't get the raise, you get a pizza day, and then you find out the CEO just got another bonus of $500,000. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
something's not mathing. I'm just saying. But I do remember we did have that barbecue day, and all the managers stopped what they were doing. They came out. They took time to actually stay in that hot sun. What was it, like 95 degrees barbecuing, and there wasn't shade? Like you guys tried, it just didn't work out. And they took the time for us, full day. It was awesome. Um, a few things here and there, but it depends on the circumstance,
Yeah.
the situation, the work life balance. How is your culture doing in your job? Are you sure your employees are happy? If they're not happy and just throwing them a random pizza party may not set the correct tone, it might be, let me just get this for you and you can shut up. You know?
Yeah.
So that's why I say the pizza thing is no longer a good idea. It's developed a bad rap. Whereas um, we were dealing with a particular cyber attack at one of my jobs, and the boss, he was on it with making sure that it not only was the attack being taken care of, but his employees. I didn't have to stay overnight, but most of our employees did. Our
Mm.
infrastructure team, they were on the clock 24 hours, I think, for 3 days straight,
Yeah.
and I think they went somewhere to shower and went right back to work, but they had all their stuff set up in that work environment, and he made sure they were taken care of. Even outside the attack, we had a full complimentary room to us, and that showed me the CEO does care about his people, not just with the goodies, but making sure no one is doing unpaid overtime without the benefits, making sure no one is overly stressing about their work environment and having to meet certain quotas per se.
Mm-hmm.
We all had to meet quotas, but he was very pro family.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't agree with it 100%. Not the pro family part, but just some of his actions
Yeah.
were a little bit hypocritical. But that was the best I've seen out of all places I have worked, except for right now. That in the corporate lifestyle, he did it.
Yeah.
He did what so many people are asking of their bosses, their CEO departments or C-suite departments. He did it. He made sure we were taken care of. And don't let him catch you getting nasty with somebody else. Because, oh my gosh, the father figure came out. My current boss, also, family is everything. When I got sick, he demanded I stopped working. He was like, don't worry about it right now. Take care of it later. I remember what we started talking about, but I'm just saying.
Yeah. No worries. Well, that was pretty much the full spectrum when it comes to recruiting and selection. I wanted to touch on one more thing before I let everyone go,
Yes.
and that is going to be metrics. So
Oh
looking
boy.
at the numbers.
Oh boy.
So tracking and analyzing recruitment metrics. Some of the more key ones that you would want to do. I won't delve too deep into them just because I know we've been here for a little bit. Time to fill, cost per hire, applicant conversion rates, and source effectiveness. All those are very effective as far as trying to find what works best for you, what is working the best, how to improve it, what specifically is kind of the issue, what's the pinch point. And if you stuck with me this long, I truly appreciate it. If you like the content, please rate the show. And if you're feeling a little crazy, maybe share it with someone.